Okay, today's video we're going to talk about how to drastically improve your Google Smart Bidding, Target CPA, Target ROAS campaigns on Google in 15 minutes or less. I have the exact how-to guide and how to do that for you. It all has to do with conversion tracking, how your conversion tracking is set up, the quality of your conversion tracking, and your data related thereof. How to fix or patch up holes in it so that you get an instant boost in the amount of profit or ROI your existing campaigns get with this set of actions. So I'll go through what that method is. I'll go through a background about conversion tracking so you understand a frame of reference of why we're doing this and how it works and why it works. And with that, you'll understand fully going out of this video something you will know how to do that works and ultimately have confidence in what personally we do here at Guaranteed PPC Agency for clients when their tracking has been screwed up in the past and want to get a quick win out of it by using these actions. So that said, I'll get right into the meat of this. If you use any kind of automated bidding through Google Ads, specifically, Target CPA, Target ROAS, even enhanced CPC bidding, which all use machine learning and the machine learning algorithms to identify of the keywords that you should show up for, the types of people typing them in, which of those people your ad should show up for versus other ones, or just in general as well, what long tail keywords should your ad show up for versus not. You have good conversion tracking set up. When you get a conversion, Google looks at the keyword they typed in as well as what traits this person has, their demographics, their psychographics, and in the future they know a little bit better how to spend your money getting you a particular person who you're bidding on red shoes as a keyword, but they know the people that normally convert at a much higher rate skew female and a certain age demographic and a certain area of the US and a certain device where they can learn how to tailor your ads to get you better results over time. And they're doing this to help themselves out, given they want to make a better user experience for everybody on Google, and where you can't do well serving the user, taking that user from click to purchase or inquiry, they'll have somebody else who's trying to advertise on Google Ads in your spot there. And so you get the best people you could serve, they get the best people they could serve. Technically everyone kind of wins out of that situation. You get a good ROI out of it, Google gets people to come back to Google. Respectively, if you use any of those bidding strategies, those automated bidding strategies, that's going to use the past history of your account performance to boost or steer where your account's going to go in the future, more than likely, if you're using those bidding strategies, has some kind of issue with the tracking that powers it at some point. So to give you a quick background here, first of all, not a lot of people even set up their conversion tracking right. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of accounts. I'd say 20% set up their conversion tracking correctly in terms of their purchasing, or if they're generating leads, the phone calls and the form fills are tracked properly. More people on the e-commerce side track their stuff correctly than the lead generation side. Ironically, and of the e-commerce companies, it's probably about half even set up their tracking right, but that's a huge edge on everybody just having that one thing set up. And then also what things people do is they don't do the tracking right away. They're so anxious to try to get rich from Google Ads. They start up their ads. They don't even worry about tracking for a while. Not until it doesn't work and they're losing out their ass already do they actually seek to get their conversion tracking set up the right way, or just want to know what it's making, if you will, which that's a whole thing in itself, because Google always undercounts the conversions to some degree, and to really know how much you're making, you got to be able to somehow see the correlation between your bank account and the ad spend that you have, which I've talked about on other videos. But respectively, they don't set up their tracking, or they don't set it up right away, and they lose half the value of what they're spending their money on with Google, which is the data that tells you what works versus what doesn't work, and which Google can use to steer your ads through the smart bidding, as I talked about, as well as the human side of things, where you can use the bid adjustments on your end, respectively, to steer your account as well. Know where to add negative keywords where it's not obvious those negative keywords are bad terms, or just pausing keywords, whatever. So, but you set up the tracking, and another big thing, so if they got past, actually setting up their tracking and setting it up, early on in the process, you run your PPC campaigns on Google, usually for years. That's what it's about. It's about you pay the price up front, run your campaign at a loss for a little while, it's profitable, and then you build on your progress after that, and you run your campaign for the next 5 to 10 years, and it gets more and more profitable over time. But people expect the tracking, which is difficult. The reason why people don't do tracking is also difficult to set up for somebody who's never done it before. Respectively, they'll set it up though, and because I think it is so much of a problem, they, in their mind, just think, I don't have to ever check this. And I can tell you for a fact, if you have your tracking set up for years while your account's running for years, almost for sure, your tracking is going to break at some point. Why does it break? The main reason is your website's always changing. So you'll have a website developer come in and upgrade your website. Guess what? Your tracking's all screwed up now. Or you'll have somebody add some small tweak to your website. A programmer comes in, whatever, makes a change, and that affects the tracking or some component of the tracking in and itself right there. Well, and that's the issue, by the way, with hiring crappy programmers. They come into your website to make what you think is a small change. They screw up something else in the process, and I see this all the time. Half the value from running your Google ads is the tracking data, because that's everything, especially when you're using smart bidding here, all your future results and the results you have up to that point or moving forward are built upon. You have some dummy come in and screw up your tracking. Respectively, you lose a few months worth of data. Half the value of that $3,000, $10,000 a month, whatever you're spending on Google ads is just poof, gone. So you thought you were slick hiring somebody for $50 an hour off Upwork. It didn't cost you much money, but then you end up losing $10,000 worth of data from your Google ads campaigns because they screwed up your tracking. But there are many other ways that tracking gets screwed up. Those are the big ones, okay? The main thing I want to get across here is don't expect your tracking to work and just work on its own. And all of your campaign results are built on the tracking. You lose money on your campaigns up front just to gather data enough so that you will eventually get your campaigns to work. And if you didn't know that's how it works on Google, it absolutely is, especially nowadays. Respectively, you got to be able to know, as a part of you just advertising on Google, be responsible for that tracking and making sure it's working all the time. Not just hope it works, not just pray it works, but know it works. Okay? And because when it stops working, you have the potential to derail completely all of your results, and to the point where if it's bad enough, and you don't know what you're doing, you don't know the stuff that I'm going to tell you on this video, the years of data and history you've built up on your account to get you where you're at that 800% ROI your account's now finally generating, that you ultimately are cashing out of with the system, it's gone. It's wiped out completely because the tracking was screwed up for so long, i.e. just a couple months or a few months, that this algorithm got so confused by the curveball that you threw at them which things that they thought they knew doesn't apply anymore. And so they just go back to reset everything. If you make a big enough screw up or change on Google ads, as is same thing with Facebook ads as a side note, the algorithm at some point just says, everything I know is wrong. Let's go back to square one and relearn everything. And then you're you're literally like you're advertising from day one all over again. So I can't stress enough how important the tracking is to keep working, and not only that, but keeping on top of it so it doesn't break. But not only that, when it does break, know you could fix it right away so you don't have huge gaps of time or lapses of time where the tracking's actually broken. If it breaks, you're on top of it. You know ahead of time that it's going to break because that's just how things go. And when it does break, you got a disaster plan to get it back up and online quickly. So, and with that, all of our clients' accounts that we manage, we're checking stuff on the tracking every month as a part of just as a courtesy for our clients. But you should, as well as everybody else, should be actually checking their tracking every single month to make sure it's working, because it's so important and for all the things I already just said. If you do, now here's the thing, but a lot of people also don't recognize. If you know how to set up the tracking and you know how important it is to your results, and you check your tracking semi-often, and you see it breaks and you get it back on, you do all that stuff, which you're ahead of now 95% of everybody else. When it does break, there is a way to tell Google that your tracking broke, and so your precious algorithm that now knows how to get you an 8-to-1 return on your ads, where you're just making millions of dollars a year from your Google ad campaign now, respectively, to not have that being disturbed by aiding Google and aiding the algorithm and helping them understand that, yes, the tracking was broke here, so ignore this length of time. I've got 5 years worth of data. Our tracking was broken for 3 months. Ignore this 3 months and just go back to using the 4 years and 9 months worth of data. That's basically, I'm still going to then return back to the 8-to-1 return I had before this 3 months of data, last 3 months where the tracking was broken, that confused the hell out of you. Okay, so you could actually recover from a lapse like that where 3 months the tracking was broken. Your results are starting to go off the rails, right? Or have already, I should say, already by then. That'll almost surely be the case. And you can undo the the algorithm getting confused and starting to your performance start going down. Your performance can go back up to where it was again using the thing, something called data exclusions, which is a normal part of every Google Ads account. Using data exclusions feature of Google Ads, you can audit your campaign and exclude the time periods where it wasn't working to improve how those campaigns are working right away. So with that, you just got to know when the tracking was broken. You tell Google when that time period is, and then everything should go back to normal. The reality is it doesn't usually return 100% back to normal, but most of the way, which is why you still don't want to just be reckless in your tracking auditing policy, which you should have, and if you don't have, you need to put it into place today, so that you're still you're going to be fixing the tracking as quickly as you can if and when it breaks, or should I say when it breaks. But on top of that, when it breaks, you still have another tool so from the side of Google still having some period of time where they're going to have the wrong data about your campaigns coming in, you can tell Google to exclude that time. And so basically when the tracking breaks, when it breaks for your campaigns, it basically won't affect your progress and your momentum that you've built up over time and will continue to build at all. Because it's usually, if it breaks, you're going to know about it in 30 days or less. You're going to fix it, and then you're going to do the data exclusion. And really, basically, if you do both of those, the tracking's broken less than a month's time, and you do the data exclusion, you will return back to the 100% of all the results you had. If the tracking's broken for a long time and you do the data exclusion, you'll get a lot back, but not completely, as I've kind of found. Just so that you know in advance, this isn't a miracle pill, if you will. If you've really completely screwed up your account. Because like I said, the algorithm at some point just says, you know, screw it, I'm going back to 0. And once that's happened, there's no coming back, basically, for the most part. So it depends on how bad your tracking screwed up. If it's just a little screwed up and you do this, it can be the band-aid you need. If it's been totally screwed up for like a year and that like you had tracking and then there was 0 tracking and it's been a year, it's questionable how much of a benefit that will actually be for you. Even though I've seen where that actually, in that situation where you'll actually get a nice boost anyway. So bottom line, the longer it is and the more it's screwed up, the less that this tool can help you, but you should use it no matter what anyway, because you never know what you're going to be able to get out of the improvement from this, using this data exclusion tool. But the process that you're going to go through to actually know how to use it, and the way that I use it for our clients' campaigns, is like this. Here's how to do it. First, out of 3 steps, pull up a lifetime chart of your Google account showing A, cost per conversion, B, conversions. Look for any spikes in your data. So I click on all campaigns in the Google Ads account. On my chart up top, making sure that's showing, I have on one line cost per conversion and on another line conversions. And I'm going to set the date range to all time, or basically going back to when the first known date that your conversion tracking was actually set up right. Okay? From that, your lines should be fairly consistent all the way through if your tracking was always fine. If it was one point, it'll come along and it'll go, there'll be a strong dip and then it'll come back. Or it'll go down and it'll stay down, till present if it's still screwed up. So that's a good way to know if your tracking's broken, because sometimes you don't know if it's broken or not if you're not paying really close attention, because you could have all the same goals, but the goals aren't firing correctly. And actually, more often than not, the goals just don't fire correctly. It's not, your tracking doesn't get screwed up because your goals get deleted. Some of the goals that you have don't fire correctly, or they fire sometimes and not others, which is why you want to look at the lifetime history of cost per conversion and conversions and see if the consistency of the data you had kind of coming in, is it consistent? And if it's not consistent, that could be because you tried out a new strategy, but more than likely, if it's a massive change and then it stayed there, your tracking's probably broken. And to confirm that for yourself, you could go, at the time it looks like it broke, you can go into the change history and see what changes you make. And if there's not a huge monumental change that occurred at that time and date, basically that your cost per conversion and number of conversions you were getting drastically changed by like more than 20%, you'll know it's the tracking. You'll know you have to fix your tracking. Number 2, find the campaigns and possibly devices where it looks like your tracking was broken. So one thing with this data exclusion tool here that Google has is they actually let you exclude the data for particular campaigns and devices. Normally that doesn't come in very handy. You exclude the data on a particular time range for everything. Okay, if you had a mobile site, maybe the tracking on the mobile site was screwed up, and then you could just apply a date range which you want Google to ignore that particular date range and the conversion data that was coming in during that date range for mobile only. Okay, but respectively, that I just wanted to point that out. That is an option. Okay, 99% of the time you're just going to, because people don't have mobile sites anymore, they have responsive sites that are different, and unless they're using AMP or something like that on a different domain or something like that. Number 3, so wait, before I get to 3, side note, if you're using irrelevant goals, so there's what I see all the time in clients' accounts or prospective clients' accounts, is in the conversion menu, I'll see a bunch of conversion goals that don't work. They all show zeros in like the last 30 days to 90 days. Or there'll be conversion goals that are duplicates or triplicates of each other. Or they'll track nonsensical things like 3 minutes on site. As a side note, I don't track any of that crap unless I'm starving for data. Sometimes if I'm starting out an account and you have a small budget and the cost per click is really high and we only have like 10 clicks a day or something like that, in order to get the algorithm fed with data quicker and faster, I'll track if somebody goes to the contact page sometimes. But respectively, you guys, you just want to track phone calls, form fills if you're doing lead generation, and if you have both of those contact options available, which generally you should, or you're tracking purchases itself for e-commerce. And when you're tracking purchases, the Google Ads tag versus the Google Analytics tag is actually more accurate, as I found, as just a quick extra side note. But that's all you need. That's all you want to track, of course, because that's ultimately what you're after. And when the algorithm has all these other irrelevant goals, like 3 minutes on site, they're going to get confused. Because, okay, sure, somebody who's been on the site for 3 minutes may correlate with a purchase or be somebody that's more likely to purchase, but it's not enough of a quality indicator that somebody will purchase that the algorithm can't make really strong decisions. You're going to get overall less results from your Google Ads account if you have erroneous data that's not totally precise for them to look at, basically. You will get the best results telling them exactly what generated a lead or got generated a sale. And if you want to do better, if you're generating leads, you set up offline conversion tracking. And when a lead comes in, you can usually close the deal within 90 days because your price point is not, four figures or higher. Or we'll just say, 5 figures or higher. Then when somebody purchases, you take the revenue and the fact that they purchased and you import that back into your Google Ads account using this offline conversion tracking process, which if you don't know how to do that, I've got an article on my blog and I have multiple videos on this channel about that. And so that instead of just the algorithm gunning for more leads, which a lot of times they'll be able to get you more leads, but they don't understand the leads that come in that are the cheapest are also the shittiest usually, right? Because if all your competition adds free as a negative keyword and you somehow didn't do it yet for whatever reason, at some point they start what happens is you're humming all along, and then the algorithm tests having your ad show up for free plumbing services, and you get a conversion at a super cheap cost. And so they're like, wow, keyword with, what's different about this keyword is the word free. Let's try adding free to other keywords. And then you get into this self-perpetuating feedback loop that gets you more and more and more of your budget spent on the shittiest parts of the search traffic that's out there. And I'm sure you're getting more leads out of your same budget or a lesser cost per lead, but they're all shittier leads. And then so basically you wonder why the lead quality you're getting is going to shit. And the reality of that is because your conversion tracking wasn't set up right. So if it were my business, which I do it for our own business too, get offline conversion tracking set up for your business so that the algorithm can get you what you want, not because it can only work off of the data you give it. The quality of your data that you have is everything with smart bidding. Okay? As a side note, if you have an e-commerce business and you take more than 10% of your orders through the phone, you also want to use offline conversion tracking to take the purchases through the phone and get them put into your ad account so the algorithm has an even better understanding of how to guide your ads. Why? Because the people that usually call before they purchase are likely going to be the ones that have the highest ticket values, because somebody who is going to spend the most is going to be more likely to have to want to talk to somebody on the phone first before they have confidence enough to purchase. So if you exclude that 20% of purchases, then the best of the best, most profitable orders, Google doesn't know they're happening, And then now your campaign performance is neuter, again, just because of the tracking that you're doing. Tracking is so important when it comes to PPC anymore. And with that, it's not a matter of if you're going to get good results with Google Ads. It's a matter of when. How much data is it going to take? If you look at things that way, and you also look at things like my landing page and ad, if it's better, I'll do anything to make it better than my competition's, and my offer is as good and my sales process is as good, I'm gonna make a pile of money with Google Ads. If you just, it's a simple formula. So basically, but regarding the goals that you don't need, as you're doing this as a side benefit to yourself, you might as well do it. Any of these crappy, like 3 minutes on site or whatever, or it could be, learn more button clicks. You can now change those goals in the conversion menu to secondary. That way Google ignores those in the calculation of how your campaign should be steered through the smart bidding algorithm. Okay? So I recommend you do that just as you're doing this, to clean up the data that Google has on how to run your campaigns. So that's just a side note. But with that, if you notice there's a problem, your conversion tracking is not showing a consistent amount of conversions through the lifetime of running your account since you've set up the conversion tracking for your account, okay, you will then capitalize on the data exclusions feature of Google Ads, where that's located will be, you click on the tools and settings icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. It's a little wrench. Click on bid strategies, then click on advanced controls, and then click on data exclusions, and then enter your dates in question where the tracking has not been working. Okay? So respectively, again, the longer that you've had your tracking not working, the bigger of impact this would have had on your overall potential of your campaigns your tracking had been working the whole time. And it can't perform miracles if your tracking's been broken for so long and so badly broken for so long that Google's actually reset everything they thought they knew about you. It won't go back and put things right back to where they were. A lot of cases. Sometimes it can, definitely can. Sometimes it can't. If your tracking's partially broke, it'll basically, you always through this process, you'll get a bump in your performance right away because you've shown Google that there was a problem, and then, of course, you fixed it. To some degree, of course, Google can figure out when tracking might be screwed up. If the tracking's been broken for a long time, they can make some conclusions on their own, but they don't always make the right conclusions, and you don't want to put it up to chance. Doing this process, there's certainly absolutely nothing there's no downside to doing this, as long as you know that the tracking was actually broken during those times. And just by cleaning up the goals that you don't need, adding the goals that you should have, excluding the date ranges in which the tracking was broken, right away you'll get a big jump in your results. Okay? And then from there, your rate of growth and your performance is going to skyrocket. But just to put things in a frame of reference a bit more here, basically what I've found when we've done this in the past, because usually what I'll be doing is we'll have an audit of a prospective client's account, and I'll look at exactly what I told you here. Conversions, cost per conversion over the time in which the campaign's kind of like started, or the tracking, realistically it's when the tracking started. But with that, if I notice something's broken and we end up being in a client with that account, the first thing that I'll do is apply a data exclusion as a part of our way to fix up the tracking here. And with that, 60 to 90 days basically into having made that change, I'll get an average of about half of the in terms of what value I would have got with the tracking not being there, I'll get half of the value of that back. Okay, so basically, the results were growing at a certain rate, and then the results got screwed up, and then they've been kind of screwed up for a while. If we apply the exclusion, whatever results that we should have been getting in terms of our current rate of growth, we'll recover about half of that, okay, on average. Again, it varies depending on how bad your tracking was screwed up, for how long. Did Google, reset, what they know completely about your account or not yet? But that's about the typical average. And so with that, that's why the title of the video is in 15 minutes or less, you can greatly improve the ROI of and profit your campaigns are making. Because all you have to do is just see when the tracking's broken, tell Google it was broken during those times. It'll do a recalibration. It won't be instant usually, as I found. But if you come back and check in 90 days, they'll take what you told them about the data being broken, they'll run their own tests on it, and then they'll realize, yes, what you told them appears to be a positive, will affect positively them finding you the customers you want that converted a high rate, if they would account for the data being broken during that time. So they don't take it in other words, they don't take what you say literally. They use it as a suggestion. They verify if they ignored that certain date range, if in the future, those next 90 days, basically 60 to 90 days, that your account now performs better. Now they'll make the permanent correction, excluding those days, and everything won't be so screwed up anymore, first of all, from your account. But and you'll never be able to recover the data that you would have had as per your tracking would have just been working right during that time. But at least, because there's two factors, right? Because your tracking breaks, there's two things that are affecting you. One, you're losing potential data that you could have had and didn't. Two, you have data feeding in that's the wrong data that screws up any of the past data that you've collected for your campaigns itself. So you won't get the data back, but what derailment you had with your campaigns because you fed in the wrong data all of a sudden, and their system doesn't know your tracking just stopped working. They think the campaign's just what they knew just isn't working anymore. The market's changed or whatever. You'll usually, if you were growing by 10% a month or whatever, and you should have got another 30% of growth during the 3 months that your tracking was broken, for instance, you can get 15% of that growth that you would have got back during that time just by having fixed this, because a good half of, basically, from what I conclude here anyway, half of the effect of what you lost overall in terms of not having your tracking working for a period of time can be fixed just by using this data exclusions tool, okay? So after 60 to 90 days, you should get an increase, half the data which has been, or half the data being excluded, half the time being excluded that you would have normally got if their tracking was fixed during that time, or half of the loss during that whatever time it was your tracking was broke that you would have normally got. You'll get half of the benefit back as if your tracking was working the whole time, because basically they clean up and they'll stick to using all the past data without that 3 months worth of data that the tracking was broken in their calculations on how your ad should run from now on, and that's how it is. So respectively, that's kind of the whole thing I wanted to tell you about the data exclusions feature ads today, and about conversion tracking as a whole. Give you some great other tips about how to improve your results, enhancing your tracking with offline conversion tracking, enhancing your tracking with making sure you have the right goals, adding goals as secondary, as well as putting together a auditing policy of your tracking every 30 days, coming back, seeing if your tracking works. And with that, physically go and test every goal. Assign somebody at your company to test every goal and see if every goal works. And when it doesn't work, quickly have a plan already lined up a person, a contractor that can fix your tracking quickly, retest all the goals. Don't just count on the person have fixed stuff, have fixed your tracking. Once it's working, apply your data exclusion given the process that I gave you, the place where you can do it inside your ad account I gave you today. And you won't have any problems basically at all with tracking breaking ever as you run your Google Ads campaigns into the future. So your investment into Google Ads will have to pay off, because ultimately the more data you acquire, the better your results are going to get, the better Google knows how to run your ads, and ultimately your tracking breaks will not affect you. And when it does break, you've had such a good plan / policy into place that ultimately it's a non-factor at this point. So, but there is a way to definitely get an instant boost in your results just using the data exclusion for the date ranges which your tracking was broken, in which the tracking was broken or can verify it, and we didn't have any other big changes going on at that time. That's apparent, the change history. And get another big benefit today, given most people's tracking has broken. If you've been running your campaigns for years already, you'll have a turnkey way to get a little bit more performance out of your campaigns with 15 minutes of action on your account. I'll wrap it up with that though. I would really appreciate it if you like this video to like the video. I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC money making strategies that I use for our clients' accounts here. If you like my videos, consider subscribing. I have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build the PPC campaigns that we use for our clients to guarantee their results. If you want to see things on a more step-by-step basis, maybe that can be also some potential help for you there as well. If you have any questions about the data exclusions tool that Google has available for us to make any corrections for tracking lapses that we've had while we run our campaigns, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a day or two. That said, hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you on my next video that comes out in another day or two time. See you there.